Let's call to order the regular meeting of the Zionsville Redevelopment Commission for Tuesday, May 26, 2020. This public meeting will be conducted pursuant to Governor Eric Holcomb's Executive Orders 20-02, 20-04, 20-08, and 20-26, and to exercise its powers under Indiana's Emergency Management and Disaster Law, Indiana Code 10-14-3. Additional information regarding the meeting is provided in the annex published with this agenda. So we will kick this off as a virtual meeting as we have in the past couple of months. Wayne, are you able to provide a report, or shall we come back to you when you have some time?
No, I'm happy to provide a report. It's provided to you all virtually there. Your TIF activities for Zionsville 106th Street TIF, the Zionsville Medical Building is currently, I believe, under frame. Certainly we're doing their footing work over the last 2 weeks. And ARIA Apartments, we continue to move through that project at a pretty rapid pace. Blackacre in the Village at 98 South Main, we're moving forward with commercial remodel permits. The 106th and Bennett project, which is your Seth Alt multi-tenant industrial flex building, commercial permits been issued for a tenant finish. Hotel Tango is pushing forward with state design release and seeking local permitting. Trico addition is underway, and the Michael Cole project at 30 North Main, that permit is on file and has been issued for Tom Simmons there. And Iron Wills Holdings, which is 10960 Bennett Parkway, permit was issued as well on that project a few months back. You can also see Town Hall, TIF, Seek LLC continues to do a little bit of work, and your Appaloosa Crossing project at 300 South continues to push forward and work through its due diligence and entitlement process with the town. Creekside itself, we'll be looking at sending out some CAM bills here soon to parties. The property maintenance is well underway. Potentially some additional tree maintenance might be something we undertake. There's some irrigation issues we've got to work through as well. Marketing is something we're working through with internally, and we've had just a number of conversations recently with many interested parties, so we continue to push forward on all those fronts. All that said, I'll stop there and take any questions.
For the committee, is everyone aware of, like, under the 106th Street TIF, are you aware of what those projects are? Do you need it? You know, these have been there for a bit, so I'm comfortable with them. Do you have any question on any of the projects specifically to what that development is, or the remodel, or who's coming in there? Are we good there? Okay.
I'm good, but I've been here a bit, so.
We got this is Colleen, we got an update when we first onboarded on some of the legacy projects. So I think we've had an opportunity to ask questions
Okay.
To your point. And I appreciate, Sanjay, your asking the question, but I think I'm good.
No, I would agree.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your report.
Certainly.
Moving along, the TIF at Appaloosa Crossing discussion. Matt Price is on the line and is here to offer an update on the development status and timelines, and also the bond issue that they are proposing.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, it's Matt. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you tonight. I apologize up front. I've got kind of double duty tonight. I've got another hearing across the street in Columbia City, Indiana tonight, so I'm talking from my car. But I do have, I think, a positive update to provide, and would like to share that with you. You may recall that during our last RDC meeting, we were awaiting some updated project expense data, as well as updating our projections for assessed valuations for the development. And we gave that information to Tim Berry and his team to evaluate as part of doing a capacity analysis to determine how much could be potentially financed through a developer purchased bond. And so we have subsequently provided that information. There has been I would say, an adaptation, just acknowledging some of the real world situation that we're facing with regard to timing. And so what we have provided to Tim and his team and the town is the plan for dividing the project really into 2 phases. And the way it would work as we're proposing it today is that our initial phase would concentrate on the 3 southernmost outlots, meaning those 3 outlots that are immediately south of the main entrance. So it's outlots I, J, and K as phase 1. And that includes, for example, the outlot immediately south of the main entrance for which we have some fairly pressing timeframes for delivering that building pad to the purchaser. And then we would defer and pursue phase 2 of the project, which would include the retail center that received development plan approval earlier this spring until essentially next spring. And the reasons for that, as you might imagine, are that the retail sector, while we still believe the location and the fundamentals of the project are very sound, the retail users are almost uniformly pausing in terms of making a decision on new locations. As Bob Harris had explained to me, many of them are more concerned today about making sure that they are manning and taking care of their existing locations before they focus on expansion. And so we think it makes sense to include the retail portion of the project as part of a phase 2, concentrate on the matters that we have kind of in our grasp today that frankly just aren't as affected by the pandemic. And in fact, their businesses have actually experienced an uptick as a result of some of our current situation. Another update I can provide, which I'd like to share in more detail, is that we have now received a signed definitive purchase agreement from a empty nester community builder for the 22 acres that are east of the outlots and west of Willow Glen, and that's for the remainder of the real estate. And so we had given a preview that such a user might be possible. Those discussions have continued very favorably and resulted in receiving a signed purchase agreement from that buyer on Friday, actually, of this week. And so we feel like that's another very positive aspect of the project as well. It's a bit of a change in direction as far as the phasing of the project, but we think it makes sense, and frankly is just reflective of our of the current climate that we're operating in. I should also add, and I apologize, I didn't say this at the outset, Bob Harris was going to join the meeting this evening as well, and I received word just a little while ago that he has had an accident with one of his pets and is currently at his family dog, and he's actually at the vet with an emergency situation. So he apologizes for not being on the call with us this evening. That is primarily our update, and I'd like to offer to answer any questions that you have. And then I have one other kind of topic that I wanted to share as well that that we've explored, I think, preliminarily with Tim and the town, but I'd like to make sure everybody is kind of aware of another, we think, opportunity, but another approach we may also be able to take advantage of in order to generate more tax increment revenues sooner. But I'll wait a second to see if there's any questions on that update before going further.
Matt, how does moving your infrastructure for phases 1 and 2 are essentially going to stay the same in terms of the public infrastructure, the sewers and the drainage and the trail and the turn lane along 421. How does pivoting from the retail center to IJK impact the timing of construction? Obviously, we were anticipating the retail to begin spring of this year, which is now. You still need to go through reapplication through Plan Commission, etc. When would you anticipate breaking ground on the 3 southern lots and in general the infrastructure work?
We would still anticipate doing that this summer, really immediately. I want to clarify one aspect of that. We do have plan approval for the infrastructure for the entire project. We do have to have development plan approval for Outlot I for that end user, but not for the, for example, sewer, water. The infrastructure, et cetera, has been approved in final plans.
Good, thank you.
And so, for example, the phase 1 would include the sanitary sewer extension, the water. It includes all of that to serve the development.
Okay, great.
And still an immediate need. And I'll tell you, I believe I've shared this, but I know just to refresh everyone, and this is kind of a unique aspect of alcoholic beverage law, which is that the user of Outlot I is a liquor store, and they have a permit that they purchased at auction, which they're required to put to use within 1 year of the date that they secured not 1 year, 2 years of the date that they secured the permit. They have used 1 year. And so we have some fairly strict contractual obligations to deliver that lot so that they can put that permit to use. It may be that, as with a lot of agency-related work, that there is some relief from that timeline, but there has not been any coming so far, and we're operating as if it will not come, and because that's what our contract says right now with the buyer, and so that's why we're still looking to proceed with a development that would break ground here really as soon as we got the financing package finalized. And I should add, Mr. Harris has finalized the loan that would be available to purchase the bond should one be issued here. He has that financing in place.
Anyone have any questions for Matt in regards to Appaloosa Crossing?
Could I go back to my kind of other issue? I apologize, I mean to jump on any questions there. Sorry.
Nope, you're good.
The other item I wanted to mention, and I want to put this out there for the board's consideration and evaluation. It is perhaps not common, but it's an opportunity here that I want to make you aware of, which is that the empty nester component of the project is a residential use, and typically the law precludes capturing tax increment from a residential use. there is an avenue whereby you can create an age restriction on that housing stock. And if the project complies with the terms for an age-restricted TIF, then you can capture tax increment from a residential use. And there's a few different criteria you have to meet, which your bond counsel can explain. But the chief one is that the builder must agree and must commit to at least 80% of the homes being available only for 55 and over residents. And our purchaser in our written agreement has agreed to make that voluntary commitment if asked by contract. And so that does a few things. One, it creates additional and what we think timely tax increment revenue for the project, and would allow us to more quickly finance and get repaid for things like the sewer extension, pathways, other elements of the project that you determine are eligible for TIF financing. And what we think is perhaps worth some study is that whether from a policy standpoint it may be advantageous for the town when a new residential development that is eligible for age restriction, that if that is determined to be good policy, if the developer agrees to age restrict their community, then this may present that opportunity to study that and determine whether that is an advantageous policy or not. And in my own experience, this type of age-restricted TIF is not common. It is done in Indiana, it is permitted by law, but isn't particularly common. And I'm not sure exactly the reasons for that, but I think that some of it may have to do with the fact that many builders are simply unwilling to meet the age restriction commitment. And where one is, then it might be good policy to evaluate that. And sitting here right now, I think what we would certainly like to do is to present you with more information about how much additional increment we're talking about, and I think it would also behoove us all to provide that additional information to the school corporation, and Mike Schaefer and his analysis could evaluate, the relative strengths of that type of a proposal. But it's something I wanted to make you aware of. The infrastructure costs that we're experiencing are quite large, and this additional increment, if it were made available, could help shoulder that burden and provide for the repayment, sooner, thereby allowing the Redevelopment Commission to decide whether it wanted to continue to collect surplus increment or whether it wanted to discontinue the TIF district, having had it satisfy its purposes, or you'd have a great deal, I think, of latitude at that point to decide how you wanted to proceed. But I at least wanted to raise the topic this evening and let you know that we would certainly like to provide more information on it and pursue that if it's the board's decision to look at that.
Heather, would you have a comment about that at all? No? It's a question from a legal standpoint. Are you familiar with what Matt's talking about at all?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I think Matt's absolutely correct that this is something provided for by statute, but certainly not done very often. I think his guess for the reason why is as good as any. But we've certainly been involved in a couple of them and have seen them. It's very similar to the standard process for creating a allocation area. You need to have a little bit more feedback from the public, and there's some minimal additional steps, but I agree with everything that Matt said with regard to the age restricted housing program.
Is there a downside?
I think you just would want to have Tim and his team run the numbers to make sure that there's actually an economic upside, right? And I think that's what Matt's offering to do.
Okay.
Well, if I may, and Matt, since you can't see me, this is Mike Schaefer.
Yeah.
I think the school corporation is going to have very many questions about a thing like that. I don't want to try to even begin going through the list tonight, but we're going to have a lot of questions about the idea that any sort of residential development should be incentivized in Zionsville, in particular in cases where you say you're only going to get 20% of the houses that are sold to people who may have children, but you're going to get 100% of the TIF. We're going to have a lot of questions, so let me just leave it at that.
No, understood. And I want to be clear too. I did not say that the proposal was for 100% of the TIF. What I think needs to be part of the analysis is answering those questions and determining whether there between 0 and 100 there is some percentage of TIF that could support the infrastructure and perhaps be actually a net windfall for the school corporation. A win. We'd be looking for a win-win, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And I understand it would have to be scrutinized, and I wouldn't expect anything less.
Well, we're certainly
but it's certainly intriguing.
Well, I'm certainly willing to sit down with you and look at the details, and obviously we're going to want to crunch a whole lot of numbers.
Yeah.
I will tell you, it's the kind of thing that tends to get my hackles up a little bit, just to be very honest about it. The idea of TIF and residential is something that we've been committed to fighting for a very long time in a number of arenas. So just on the surface of it, I'm not thrilled to hear you say that. But we certainly are willing to be reasonable and sit with you and look at possibilities and numbers and see how it plays out.
Sure.
How many units are they looking at for the residential units?
It's approximately 70. We'll have to see how it actually fits on the site, but approximately 70.
Okay.
Could be less. Could be less. Could be a little more. I mean, one thing to keep in mind, and this is why I don't argue with you, Mike. I understand your concerns. One of the things that's intriguing to me, though, about this is with the use being permitted as it is today, if you do not TIF it, then you do not have any kind of an age restriction. And so I suppose you're collecting the 1%, but there isn't any age restriction. And it leaves that housing stock unregulated, if you will, as far as who the user is. So it seemed to me it was worth some analysis, especially with the kind of demographic support that the school has, to look at this and say, is this really a non-starter, or is it an opportunity at some percentage? And that's what I guess I would submit to you. And if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. I think it's something that's going to emerge as either a good idea or not.
Great. Tim is on the call, correct?
Yes, I will move him. I will allow him to speak and promote to panelist.
Matt, how much time do you have to stay on this call if we have any questions for you?
I'm about 5 minutes away from my hearing site, so I've got a good half hour, 20 minutes, half hour. So.
Okay. Well, we'd like to just get some input from Tim as we're discussing,
yep, sir.
And then if you have any questions for you, Matt, hopefully you're able to.
We have run the initial numbers as it relates to the initial need for $1.5 million in project funds for the site improvements, road improvements, infrastructure improvements that are associated with phase one. In the first year of the TIF, it will be a little tight, but as additional improvements are added to the project, there would be adequate coverage for the bonds at that point in time. Remember, this is developer-backed bond, so we would need to work with Matt and the developer. And now that we have arrangements through the bank, we can run those numbers based upon the information associated with that loan to ensure that everything ties out and works out there. I would say that as Matt also has presented to us in that phase two, there would be a request for about $1.8 million in additional TIF dollars associated with additional infrastructure improvements on this project. And we have not run those numbers, but I can tell you based on the estimated assessments on the project to date from what we received, we would be short without using that residential piece.
So Tim, just for clarity, when Matt was describing the project, he described phase one to be the southern 3 lots and phase two to be retail. And then what I would consider as phase three to be the residential. Is that how you're breaking down your phases 1 and 2? Or is your phase one the retail and lots IJK, and then phase two being the residential?
So phase one improvement, site development expenses as provided from the developer include a little over $600,000 for public road work on 421, about $54,000 associated with trail improvements, sanitary sewer improvements of a little over $236,000, and water improvements of $300,000, as well as then design and development fees, bringing the total to about $1.5 million with a contingency there of about $240,000. Phase two, and I would need Matt's help with respect to this, is for public road work on 146th Street, additional trail paving and earthwork, stormwater basin, and additional public road work to 421. And whether that is associated with the original design concept that you saw originally, or whether that also includes work associated with the residential component, I would need Matt to define.
Yes, and really the phase one and phase two would incorporate infrastructure that would support the development of that 22 acres, but it's not development within the 22 acres, if that makes sense. So like the fact that we're bringing sewer to the property, that's the same sewer that would serve that eastern 22 acres. So it's part of our phase one infrastructure costs, and makes that sewer available for the northern outlots as well as that eastern residential land. The one thing I would say that is particularly being driven by the phase two that also supports the residential piece is we have a rather extraordinary drainage improvement that we're calling it's a stormwater basement that's in the northern northwest section of the development that is just north and west of the residential development. That would certainly be part of the drainage improvements that would serve that portion of the project, and that's a phase 2 expense. So there's some what I'm describing is there is some overlap, but not a. It's probably better to think of it as really just 2 phases, and within those 2 phases, it encompasses all of the infrastructure necessary to also serve that eastern 22 acres that Bob Harris is responsible for. The developer of the residential ground will have their own infrastructure costs apart from this TIF.
Tim, when you ran numbers for, you mentioned year 1 would be tight and year 2 moving forward should be good. That was using the timeline that Matt has proposed today for IJK breaking ground this year and then retail in spring of 21. Is that correct?
Well, ABC would be in 21, I believe. The B shops would not be until 25. So, but that also does not include, this was based upon the original term sheet, which included just the $1.5 million
right, correct,
request, not the request for the additional 1.8 million that would be in that second tranche.
Correct.
Right. So what we've tried to do is provide estimates of when each property would actually come online. Certainly, if we were able to move forward with phase 2, next spring, then that all of that infrastructure would be in place. And if that additional AV came online sooner, then so much the better. But we've tried to lay out a realistic time frame given the number of lots, and frankly building in the fact that the retail environment, for example, for the retail shops was, it was different in December and January and February than what it is today. And so we're trying to be cognizant of that as well.
Okay. Wayne, is there any action we need to take on this, or are we considering just an update due to the changes at Appaloosa Crossing?
At this time, this is just an update for you. Certainly more work, details, and certainly Mr. Price has indicated additional conversation would be had, and certainly Tim Berry and his group can work to provide a final analysis. Certainly no particular action tonight, and certainly I do want to note that we, and certainly Sanjay, you noted that this meeting would be conducted in accordance with Governor Holcomb's executive orders, but one thing we didn't do was provide a specific moment in time for anybody who's in the audience that would like their name noted for the roll call. So when we're ready for that, we do want to provide that opportunity.
Thank you for that reminder.
And certainly if you would want us to do further analysis with respect to the residential component, we can do that and present that back to you.
I would say so, but I don't know why we wouldn't at least look at it.
Correct, I agree.
Great. We'll work with Matt and his team to run those numbers and present those back to you.
Matt, for our board's sake, can you provide an updated, just a plan view drawing of
Yes, sir.
phase 2? You know,
Yep.
I think we have a general idea, and I don't believe the map has changed much. But
Right.
the last time we came together, we were really focused on that retail center, and discussions
Yes.
of IJK weren't there. So just as a refresher, if you have a one-page
Yes.
plan view that Wayne and Roger can distribute to the group, that would be helpful.
That's excellent suggestion. We'll do that. Absolutely.
Okay. Any more questions for Matt or Tim at this time for Appaloosa? Hearing none, seeing none. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 4, new business, public offering process, and which is really the reoffering of certain RDC-owned lots in Creekside Corporate Park. Wayne, can you provide an update on what we've done to date and what the next steps may be? Or are we punting that to Brian? Or Heather?
I would suggest jump right to Brian. I mean, the RDC certainly in 2017 went through a public offering process. This selective public offering process is for specific lots, reoffering them. It's more equally about making sure the market is crystal clear about Creekside being available, as well as just, you know, resetting the table, if you will. But certainly Mr. Christ is here to walk us through the steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Wayne. And, you know, indeed, he's correct. The lots, I think it's lots 1 through 5, or is it 1 through 6? And then, no, it's 1 through 5, and then 7 through 9, I believe, are the lots that we have discussed reoffering, and those were offered pursuant to the statutory obligations of the Redevelopment Commission back in 2017. And I believe the idea is to refocus on these individual lots, given the activity with respect to the lots that have been sold into that process. So if you'd like me to just walk you through the process really quickly, so you know what the next steps would be, I'd be happy to do so.
That'd be great, Brian.
Excellent. So the process starts out with a simple resolution that ratifies the appointment of appraisers and then authorizes the offering of the real estate at issue pursuant to the specific requirements of the redevelopment statute. The redevelopment statute gives the RDC wide authority to condition the offering of the lots on all kinds of different types of criteria. Many of which we've worked through with respect to the other Creekside lots that we do have commercial interest. The initial offering price in the public notice has to be no less than the average of the 2 appraisals. Once that resolution is passed, then a notice of the offering is published in accordance with another portion of the Indiana Code. Then 1 week after the first notice, a second notice is published, and then 7 days afterwards, you can open up your bidding period. Now, the statute does not tell you how long the bidding period has to be open. It could be anywhere from a day to, you know, there's really no limit on it. But most redevelopment commissions or other governmental entities that offer property usually keep their offerings open for somewhere between 17 days and 30 days. So that would be a decision point for the RDC to decide how long they want to leave the bidding open. Because in the bid, you also then have to designate the day that the RDC, you know, can either be a regular meeting or a special meeting, is going to open up the bids to consider whatever bids you receive. So after the bids are received, the statute then calls for a 30-day period for the bids to be considered. And if there are no accepted bids, if any of the bids you receive are not acceptable to the RDC and no other bids are submitted, then after that 30-day period, the RDC has the ability to negotiate with any party that it desires in order to dispose of the property in any matter that they feel meets the objectives of the RDC. So with respect to these lots, it's already been done, but it is not unheard of for an RDC to reoffer property again to distinguish the offering and to focus interests on property, particularly if only portions of a property that was previously offered have been sold or otherwise conveyed for an economic development project.
Thank you for that update, Brian. Any questions for Brian? And we do have our two sets of appraisals back, so it's really now moving forward through the process that Brian described in terms of advertising and receiving bids.
Yeah, I think the next step would be for the RDC to authorize the creation of the bidding documents in the resolution, and then to have another meeting to pass the resolution with respect to the offering documents. Although the statute doesn't specifically require that the notice of the bid or the offering documents be approved by the RDC, it just talks about the appraisals in the resolution. We believe it's best practice, for the RDC to bless and review the offering documents as well, just to make sure that the criteria and that's in the offering documents, meets the goals of the public body.
Any questions for Brian in regards to the process and next steps? I'll entertain a motion to authorize Ice Miller creation of the offering documents and resolution for the public offering of certain lots in Creekside Corporate Park.
So moved.
Colleen, so moved. Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. By roll call, we'll take a vote.
Cindy?
Roger?
Here, I can roll through the having a hard. There we go. I will take. Can you hear me, Sanjay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. I will do the roll call vote. Ms. Madrick?
Yes.
Mr. Ezra?
Yes.
Ms. Hiddle?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Motion carries with 5 yeses. Thank you.
Great. We'll get that started immediately.
And the next step on this, assuming this is completed before our June 22nd meeting, we'll be required to have a special meeting, correct, Wayne, to approve the resolution and the offering documents?
Yes, I think we can move fairly quickly to put these documents together. As you indicated, Sanjay, the appraisals are in, so we can move fairly quickly. I would say most likely in the next 7 to 10 days, it would be ideal to reconvene this group so we can be in a position at your regular June meeting to provide you an update as to any interested parties that have reacted to the notice that we experienced that the last time back in 2017. And so in early July, we'll be in a position to host another special meeting. So that's how staff would view the exercise.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Brian, for taking the lead on that. And Roger will reach out to the board on some available dates, maybe the second week of June.
Second week of June would work. I actually believe that by the end of the week, we'll have the offering documents and resolutions available.
So are you suggesting later on the week of June, the first week of June?
It'd be up to you.
Okay.
If that's the timeline you'd like to operate on, we can certainly facilitate that timeline.
Well, in my opinion, the sooner the better. So if Brian, you're committing to having things in draft format by the 4th, then we could consider some dates for the dates and times for 4th or 5th for a special RDC meeting.
Did we want to try and do that on the 3rd?
I'm open to the 3rd if Brian is.
Yep, we can meet that timeline.
Okay. Well, Roger, if you could throw out an email with some times based on Brian's availability for our group, we can nail down let's do the 3rd and the 4th just to provide some flexibility if needed.
We'll do that, sir.
They can be after hours, such as our regular scheduled meetings. Okay. Wayne, do we have any other business?
Sanjay, I think we need to approve the April 27th minutes. I don't know if we did that. Did we do that?
You are absolutely right. I jumped over to Matt because I knew he was on a time frame and I failed to come back to this. So thank you, Ken, for that reminder. The memorandum has been distributed to the board members. Any questions, comments, additions to the April 27th regular meeting minutes?
I'll move that they be approved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Wayne, if you can do a roll call.
I'll take care of that. Ms. Madrick?
Approved.
Mr. Ezra?
Yes, approved.
Ms. Hiddle?
Yes, approved.
Mr. Patel?
Yes, approved. Thank you. Motion carries 5 yeses.
4 yeses, and certainly the other item would be to just create a moment for anybody who's in the audience that would like to have their attendance noted for the record. If they could raise their hand, and Roger, if you could just make a note of them, both verbally and in your notes there.
Yes, Mr. Towsley has raised his hand. Mr. Melton has raised his hand. And that's what we have so far. Thank you.
Okay.
Back to you, Mr. Patel.
Thank you. Hearing no other new business, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Just a second. Do we need to do a roll call, Wayne?
I think in the past we've not done a roll call. I would defer to the attorneys to advise, however. No, I'm getting a no.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you all. So the next regular scheduled is on June 22nd, and stay tuned for a date for next week with Brian.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
See ya.
Everybody.